Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that is sometimes wrong, but super fun to talk about.
Always fun.
Yeah, I'm Lesley.
And I'm Shawna.
And today we are doing our very last deep dive into the Brawl decks that have been released by by Wizards of the Coast. Our videos are intended to show you what the deck does, give you a little bit of insight into all the cards that are in the deck, what they're intended to do, how many there are of each thing, and then if you get to the very end of this video, or skip ahead if you really need to, then we have some ideas for tweaks and things that we might do to the deck if we had it, but we'd love to hear what you would if we had it. I have it. I love fairies, so it was like a no-brainer for me. But yeah, if you have ideas or whatever at the end too, please comment, reach out to us on any of our social medias. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, I guess the first thing we need to do is talk about Brawl. What the heck is Brawl? If this is your first video or podcast that you're listening to, what is Brawl, Shawna?
Brawl is a fun, shorter version of Commander because sometimes we hate those long games. So this is a Commander version that only has 60 cards, and it has to be all cards from standard rotation. So it's still the one card of each card, except for basic lands, of course. Just like Commander, you have a Commander in the command zone. Same sort of thing happens, except you don't count Commander damage in that way. If you're playing with two people, I believe your life total is 25. And if you're playing multiplayer, it's 30. So it's a little bit different that way too. So it's a faster Commander game. It's meant for 1v1 mostly. But it's certainly fun to play in a group as well. So yeah.
And there's definitely some of the decks that take advantage of the group stuff.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
The another one of those quick decks.
Yes.
I love how you say all of that as if it's a question when you know that you're right.
We're sometimes wrong.
Sometimes. So this deck has a really, really fun commander. Her name is Alela, Artful Provocateur, and she has flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0, and if she just had that, she would be pretty darn good commander. But this deck is all about enchantments and artifacts because she has the additional ability that whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, you get to create a 1/1 blue fairy token with flying. So not only are you creating flyers as you're casting your enchantments and whatnot, they have +1/+0, so you're actually creating a 2/1 creature in the end.
Did you say how much she costs?
She only costs 4, so yeah, kill her. I don't care. I'll just bring her back. There is enough land in this deck too that you don't have to worry about it. You can definitely tweak by taking some of that land out, but if you just wanted to leave it in, then you're sure that you're going to be able to get her back because people will kill her right away if they're smart. So before we get into what the cards are, there's like a mana curve to hold this whole thing, color breakdown. What's the mana curve look like?
The mana curve in this one is fairly low to the ground, as we say, just because there is so many at 4 cost and less. So that's really nice. It does have 26 land in there, so that's maybe someplace you can tweak. And there's 3 in 1 mana cost, 2 in 7, 3 in 11, 4 in 7.
7 and 4.
7 and 4. And then above that, there are 6 cards that are above 4. So yeah, not too bad.
Not bad at all. And then color breakdown, we have mostly balanced deck. This is the most balanced deck of all of them. We have 8 blue, 8 white, 8 colorless, and 8 multicolor. There are only 2 black spells in this. Some of our tweaks suggest some black spells, but really you're playing mostly blue and white. There's a few black spells, I guess, for some removal, which is definitely needed. Although Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to that card.
Yes, we will. So as far as instances versus creatures and all that jazz, like I said, it has 26 lands and it has only 9 creatures, which is interesting, but it has 7 enchantments, 3 instances, 3 sorceries, and 12 artifacts. So you're going to see what those are here as we go through. But
all about
of course,
artifacts and
that's all
enchantments.
about artifacts and enchantments for those creatures.
But and ultimately, like the 9 creatures, I think that's mainly because you don't need the creatures if you're creating little blue
lots of fairies.
1/1 fairies. And I think yesterday when I was playing it, I was just playing it as a 60 card deck, which isn't advisable. It actually was fun to play, but if you're going to do that and you're just going to play it out, take out your command tower, take out your arcane signet, all of those things that refer to your commander, because you're of course not using your commander. Anyways, I won the game with my 1/1 blue fairy that was still left on the battlefield, even though they killed my commander. So
it's a strong little deck.
So yeah, so I guess the first thing that we usually like to talk about when we're doing a deep dive video, especially with commander types or commander formats, is card draw. Card draw is super important for all of our commander things, because you need the cards in your hand that you want to play when you want to play them.
Yes.
So there's some really great ones in this one. The first one that we'll talk about is Winged Words. It's for 2 and a blue. It's a sorcery and it costs 1 less to cast if you control a creature with flying, which you probably will. If you don't have a creature with flying when you need to cast it, then that would be the only reason, but I would say wait.
Yeah.
You get to draw 2 cards. So ultimately, 2 cards for 2 is really crazy. Yeah.
Because then you look at the next one, which is Chemist's Insight, and it costs 3 and a blue, and it's draw 2 cards as well. But it does have Jumpstart, so you can do that from your graveyard as well. But you have to discard a card in order to do that, is how Jumpstart works. So you get to use it twice, but it's a little more expensive than Winged Words.
Quite a bit more expensive, actually. Bag of Holding is a nice little artifact that also gets us some card draw. Whenever you discard, it costs 1 to put on the battlefield, and then whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. It has additional abilities that you can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card, then discard a card. So again, when you're discarding a card, you're going to exile that card from your graveyard. Ultimately, you're going to exile it underneath the Bag of Holding so that you know that it's been exiled with Bag of Holding. And then you can pay 4 and tap to sacrifice Bag of Holding and return all the cards exiled with Bag of Holding to the battlefield. Or no, not to the battlefield, to their owner's hand. So you get them all back into your hand. So it is okay that you discarded them, because you're going to be able to put them back in your hand later.
You're just basically making another hand for yourself, which is crazy. It works really well, actually. Scrabbling Claws, which is a artifact for 1, and it is tap it and a target player exiles a card from their graveyard. And you can pay 1 and sacrifice it and exile the target card from a graveyard and draw a card. So this is a great way to get rid of some of their graveyard shenanigans that they might be up to. Not that I ever do that kind of thing. And yeah, drawing a card is nice too.
Typically graveyard I mean, you don't have a sideboard when you're talking commander. Graveyard shenanigan things is more of a sideboard, but because of the card draw,
your whole deck on that. Some people
I meant knowing that they're playing that. Means it's usually a sideboard, but in this case, because it's commander. A Witching Well is just 1. It's an artifact. When Witching Well enters the battlefield, you get to scry 2, which is great. For those of you that aren't sure what scry is, basically you get to look at the top cards of your library, decide which of them stay on the top, which of them go on the bottom. It could be in any combination. It also has an additional ability for 3 and a blue that you can sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. So you can do that right away if you have enough mana. You've just stacked your deck in the way that you want it, and then you can draw those 2 cards if you need. Or if you put them both on the bottom, then chances are there's going to be something amazing underneath it.
Meanwhile, this is also an artifact that's just made you a fairy.
Yeah. Yes, and there's quite a few there that were either artifacts or enchantments, right?
Yeah. All right, so then we're on to our removal. So one of the first removal cards, we've had a bit of a discussion about this one, is Massacre Girl. So she is for 3 and 2 black, a legendary human assassin, a 4/4. She has Menace, and when she enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So her whole point is to do a board wipe, basically.
Mm-hmm. She
It's
is essentially a board
really
wipe.
tricky to figure out when you're playing, unless you're playing on the computer with her. I don't know. Sometimes it's...
If you're new, just go slow while you're freaking out.
Yeah.
Do it one thing at a time. And decide who dies and what triggers go on the stack at what time. But yeah, I don't know. This one, I think what we were talking about was, I mean, you need some board wipe stuff in your deck just in case someone's playing wolves or knights or something like that and they're just overrunning you. But you will do the same damage or -1 counters, I guess, not damage, to your own creatures. So because of that, you have to
little 1/1s. Yeah.
be prepared to lose your own board. So just something to think about.
You have to have a plan for building your board back up again pretty quickly because, again, this is a faster format than regular Commander. So,
and chances are, if they've gone really wide, it's because they have a really fast deck as well, and they'll be able to build up. So if you don't have a plan for building up, that's a really good point. Then they've probably already don't need a plan for building up because they went wider than you really fast, unless they've got no cards in hand or something like that. Then
and my concern with her in this deck in particular is that you've just wiped out all your flyers, which for a lot of decks, like if you were playing flyers against me, for example, you wouldn't want to get rid of your flyers because chances are my big guys are going to live, possibly, or I'm going to be able to build up again. And meanwhile, you've gotten rid of all your wonderful flyers, which is how you were getting through to me.
So, I mean, make your choices, but I know I held her in my hand yesterday when I was playing with her. The other people that I was playing with had a decently sized board each, but I didn't feel it warranted a board wipe yet because I had such advantage with the flyers that I had on the battlefield.
Yeah. Definitely.
So the next one is another board wipe, Kaya's Wrath. We'll say the same thing about this one, but it's 2 white and 2 black. I can speak. Destroy all creatures, including your own. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you control that were destroyed this way. So a little bit of a benefit to that board wipe, but same rules apply to that one.
So you see how this is where the black is.
These are the black cards.
Removal, right? So here's Mortify for 1 and a white and a black. It's instant destroy target creature or enchantment. It's really nice to have that enchantment removal when you're playing a commander deck for sure.
Targeted.
Yes.
Conclave Tribunal, another little bit of targeted removal. I love this card because it's 3 and a white, but it has Convoke, which means you can use your creatures to cast. Your creatures use whatever color they have to create whatever mana color you need. So if you have a white creature on the battlefield, you can use it for your white. The other one's just tap for whatever. And when it comes into the battlefield, you get to exile a target non-land permanent, so anything that's not a land, an opponent controls until Conclave Tribunal leaves the battlefield. So unless they have enchantment removal, you can get rid of their thing. Again, if you're playing this, try and be cognizant of what they might be playing. There's no point in using something like this on just their little 1/3 or something like that bird, because they might retaliate and do 5 damage.
I have a rules question for you, Miss Lesley.
Okay.
Can I use my creatures that have just come out, so they have summoning sickness, can I use them for the tap capabilities on Conclave Tribunal?
Oh, good question.
Because normally you can't tap a creature that's just come out.
That's true, but yes, you certainly can. In fact, I highly recommend using the ones that have summoning sickness because you can't swing with them anyway. So that's a good way to... Ultimately, summoning sickness affects attacking or using abilities, but because you're not tapping them to use an ability, you're just using them as an additional cost or an alternate cost to this card.
You can tap.
You can.
That was a question that came up last night, so that's why I thought I'd bring it up.
Good question.
Law Mage's Binding for 1, a white and a blue. This is a little underestimated card, actually. I forgot about this guy. It's an enchantment and an aura, but that has flash, which is really quite handy. So you can enchant a creature, and that enchanted creature can attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So they bring out their really big guy or doing something crazy, and you just go, nope. So forgot about this little guy.
Prison Realm, another great card. There's a few others that we're suggesting in our tweaks that are exactly like this one. 2 and a white. When it comes into the battlefield, you exile a target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So it's not non-land permanent, but it is creature or planeswalker. So you can get rid of those pesky planeswalkers if they're out there until it leaves the battlefield. It has the additional benefit, though, that when it enters the battlefield, you get to scry one. So you get a little bit of information when it comes in. If you have your commander out, you create a 1/1 blue fairy, or 2/1 in this case.
Yeah.
So great option for removal.
Then we have Frogify, which is another enchantment aura for 1 and a blue, and you enchant a creature and it loses all abilities, and it's a blue frog creature with base power and toughness of 1/1.
This is one of those rare uncommons.
Rare uncommons, yes.
It's hard to find in packs. We haven't seen it very often, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, we've opened, at home, we opened a whole box and got 2, but
I think I've opened 4 boxes and 2 pre-release kits, and
Yeah.
I've gotten like 2.
it's weird.
Anyways, it's an enchantment, so nice to use your enchantments for removal.
What happens if you have counters on that creature? I had this question last night too.
Oh, that's a good question too.
Do their counters go away when you enchant?
So when you enchant a creature, ultimately you have to look at what the text says on the card. So it loses all abilities other than card type and creature type, and its power and toughness become 1/1. However, any counters that are on the creature are additions to. So your counters, if they're still on that creature, unless you have some way of removing counters, are going to stay on that creature. So it's a 1/1. If it has 2 +1/+1 counters on it, then it still has those 2 +1/+1 counters on it. This is relevant in something like the army zombie tokens, because those come in as 0/0s with counters on them. And so if you put Frogify on an army, then it's going to actually buff it up because it was a 0/0 and you made it a 1/1.
Yep.
So
yeah, it comes up quite often, that question, because there's lots of these kinds of cards that do that sort of stuff. So.
Yep. It's all about the layers.
Yes.
It's another video. So this next section is one of my favorite sections. It is the one we call Stupid Flyers. Because flyers are awesome. I love them. And the first one is definitely a stupid flyer, but she is great and she will be absolutely easy to cast in this format. So, or in this deck. So for Saphara Skyblade for 4 and 3 white, you get a 7/7 legendary creature that makes all your other non-flying creatures that you can, or all your other flying creatures you control, have indestructible, which is great. But she has this other really cool alternate cost to her. You may pay 1 white and tap 4 of your untapped creatures and that you control with flying, rather than paying its mana cost. So that's easy. You have all these little 1/1 fairy tokens, or the other flyers that we're going to talk about, and you're just putting them on the battlefield anyway. You might as well use them to put her out. It's kind of like Convoke, but with only a 4 mana cost Convoke. So ultimately, if you thought of her as Convoke, she costs 5 instead of 7.
Yes. And again, that you can use those ones that just came out.
She's hard to get rid of unless someone has something that destroys creature. And if you have some way of making her indestructible as well, which I don't think is in standard, but perhaps if you turned this into...
There's the Unbreakable formation.
Yes, so that would protect her. If
that's white.
Yeah. Did we recommend it in this?
I can't remember.
We should.
We'll see.
If we didn't,
that's a possibility.
Think about that Unbreakable formation. Yes.
It's instant, I think.
Yeah.
We'll see if it's at the end of our video. We don't remember.
We prepared this a while ago.
And that is a stupid flyer, and that's the end of the video. Because it's the end of the game.
It's pretty much the end of the game if it's
they
out.
Get her out. It's really, really hard to deal with.
Yeah.
And then you have a card like Empyrean Eagle, a 1 for 1 and a blue and a white, and it is a 2/3 flyer that gives your other flyers +1/+1.
That's a great card.
Such a good card.
Too bad you can only have 1. So Shimmer Dragon, you know how much I like my angels, my dragons, and fairies. So this deck is perfect for me. We have Shimmer Dragon, beautiful card. Look at how big that dragon is around that castle. For 4 and 2 blue, You get a 5/6 creature dragon with flying as long as you control 4 or more artifacts. Shimmering Dragon also has hexproof. And tap 2 untapped artifacts you control to draw a card. So we could put this in the card draw section, but we thought, Stupid Flyer is probably more apt to be its category. This is going to be great, and it's perfect for this deck.
Shine Chaser for 1 blue and a white. It's a little 1/1 fairy with flying and vigilance, but whenever it gets +1/+1 as long as you control an artifact, and it gets +1/+1 as long as you have an enchantment. So chances are you got a little 3/3 plus, because God knows what else you got out there.
Well, most of your enchantments that we're going to talk about buff up your creatures too, right?
So it's silliness. So it's a really quick little fairy to get out there and have vigilance is really, really nice.
An Arcanist Owl is for 4 white-blue hybrid mana. It is flying 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact or enchantment card from among them and put it into your hand. The rest go on the bottom of your library in any random order. So you get to shuffle through your deck, pull out an artifact or enchantment, it just goes and fetches it for you.
And it is an artifact creature. So it counts towards that whole artifact thing.
Yes.
As well.
Yes, because you've played her, you've played it, and your artifact comes out. Plus there's this gets +1/+1 for every artifact you control. That counts as well.
It's crazy. Okay, so now we're into the artifacts and enchantments. I should have said stupid artifacts and enchantments too. Because, man.
Yeah.
The Ancestral Blade, which is another underestimated card in my opinion, for 1 and a white. It is when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, then attach the blade to it, and your equipped creature gets +1/+1. And equip is only 1. So yeah, this is actually quite powerful, especially in a deck like this one. It just never goes away, and you're moving it around and buffing up your creatures. Plus, you've got that whole artifact thing. You can use it for tap. You can tap it to
what?
do stuff. Yeah.
It never goes away?
It never goes away.
So if I have that on my creature, and my creature dies, doesn't it go in the battlefield or go in the graveyard
No,
too?
it does not. It gets to stay out there, and even if you don't have a creature, you can use it for that tap an artifact thing. It's just stupid. Excellent. It's underestimated.
Blood-Soaked Altar for 4 and 2 black, so it is pretty expensive. We get an artifact that allows you to tap and pay 2 life to discard a card, sacrifice a creature, and create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying. You get to activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery, which means you can only do it on your main phase, pre-combat and post-combat main phase. But yeah, 2 life, discard a card, and sacrifice a creature for a 5/5. Seems pretty easy.
Yep.
And you get another flyer.
Yeah. Oh dear. Smothering Tithe is an enchantment for 3 and a white, and this can get out of control. So it is whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap this artifact and add 1 mana of any color. So you're probably not going to use that so much for mana, those treasures. You've really messed up their game because they have to use their mana or they have to give you artifacts. And giving you artifacts is a really, really bad thing.
Yeah.
In this deck. For sure. They will find that out very quickly, and then they'll start paying to keep you from getting them.
And then another wonderful enchantment is Angelic Exaltation for 3 and a white.
Yep.
It is basically an enchantment, sits on the battlefield that whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So as you're casting all these enchantments and artifacts and all of that fun stuff entering the battlefield, you have all these blue fairies coming in, hopefully, and now you have 20 on the battlefield, and you swing with one of them, and it is already a 2/1, and it gets +20/+20 until the end of turn because you have 20 creatures.
And as I recall, doesn't your commander have Death Touch and Lifelink?
Yeah.
Just swing with just the commander?
Just your commander. Your fairies are just to buff things up. Your commander is going to win you the game.
Yeah, especially when you do that. All right. The Mace of the Valiant for 2 and a white is another artifact. And it is equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on Mace of the Valiant and has vigilance. Vigilance is really nice. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a charge counter on Mace of the Valiant.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a token, could be anything. Equip is 3. So your equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on Mace of the Valiant.
And I think it's important to note that it's whenever a creature enters the battlefield. It's not cast. It's just if it's created by something else. Even just like that soldier, that one that the ancestral blade that comes in and creates a soldier that's going to put a charge counter on this as well.
This is a deck creating token.
So the other thing to think about, I think that is worth mentioning here, is when you're keeping track of what's on your cards.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes as a new player, it's hard to know like what's the power and toughness of things. What should I put as a dice on my counter? Should I put 2 dice to represent power and toughness? Should I just put a dice for the counters? Right. Should I, because you're going to have charge counters and then it's +1/+1 for each charge counter. So the counters are on
what you're saying.
The mace, whereas they're not on the creature, they're on the mace. And if the mace falls off, the counters stay on it. How would you recommend people kind of organize their board or put things on the battlefield?
Well, especially when you're first starting out and you're playing with other players that are just starting out, you could use 2 different colored dice, perhaps, or one a dice and one just little like pips or something, like little coins or something like that, because it'd be nice for both of you and your other players to know how many are counters and how many are just +1 from a buff from an enchantment or something, if that helps you learn. But normally when you play in a game, you only put dice on for counters, actual counters, because they can be affected and stuff. And then you just have to keep track of the fact that it's getting buffed from something else. So, but when you're first starting out, it's, in my opinion, it's okay. If I'm playing against a player and that's how they want to keep track of stuff, that's totally fine with me.
Most Magic players will be okay with that. Just make sure that you kind of communicate with them what you're doing, and if you're communicating with them that you need help keeping track of, so you're using this dice for your +1/+1 counters and the other one for just your +1/+1 buffs that are coming from other things, they'll hopefully get the cue as well that it might be nice for them to do that for you so that you know what their creatures are. It's hard to pay attention to at first, but once you've been playing for a while, you'll get that, no problem.
And it is okay to ask.
Yeah.
To ask and say, how big is that creature?
Yeah.
You can ask them that question.
Absolutely.
And then they have to be honest with you.
Yeah. So the next one is a wonderful little card called Workshop Elders for 6 and a blue, so 7 converted mana cost. I love this card because this is what you and I are gonna look like. We're just gonna be sitting there.
Elders.
We'll make birds out of magic cards and we'll just sit there. Yeah, that's us in the future. Human artificers, 4/4 artifact creatures you control have flying. So, doesn't matter if it's sitting on the ground. Now it has flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have a target non-creature artifact that you control become a 0/0 artifact creature. And if you do, put 4 1/1 counters on it. So, remember when we were talking about treasure tokens? Now you have a treasure token. It doesn't even matter that it wasn't a creature. It becomes a creature and it becomes a 4/4 creature. And because of Workshop Elders, it has flying.
And if it's been sitting out, it doesn't have summoning sickness when it becomes a creature.
And then all your treasures just automatically start becoming flyers. And
they don't go away.
They don't go away until they're killed. So what happens when you've turned something into an artifact creature and it's dealt lethal damage?
It goes away. You don't get that benefit.
Doesn't just revert back to a treasure token. It dies. It's a creature. It has 0 life at the end of a turn. State-based actions are checked, and it goes to the graveyard.
You can do that any of your artifacts that you have out, even your weapons and stuff. Okay, animating fairy. This is such pretty art for sure in this alternate art version that we've got here. For 2 and a blue, it is one of those, what are these called again? Adventures in this new set.
It's our only adventure
It's
in
our
this
only adventure?
in this deck.
Oh, we should explain what adventure is in case you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So it has 2 parts of the card. The first, one of those parts is a sorcery or an instant, and the other part is a creature. So if you play the sorcery or instant first, then your creature goes off an adventure, and then you can play it after the fact. But if you play your creature first, you don't get the sorcery or instant. So that's how that works. So this one, the animating fairy, has a sorcery called Bring to Life for 2 and a blue. It makes a target non-creature artifact you control become a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4+1 counters on it. So it's similar to the elders, the old ladies, yep. And so you've got a creature all of a sudden out of your treasure token, and then it can come back in as a 2/2 flyer fairy after that. Very nice.
Very nice. Banish into Fable for 4 and a white and a blue is an instant that when you cast this spell from your hand, copy it if you control an artifact, which you will, because you're not going to cast this if you don't. Then copy it if you control an enchantment, which you will, because you're not going to cast that if you don't. And you may choose new targets for the copies. You're going to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand and create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. So for each copy of the spell, you get to create a 2/2. So potentially you get 3. Obviously, you don't have to have an enchantment and an artifact on the battlefield, but I would recommend it. By the time you have 6 mana to play that, you should.
You should have. Yeah, so for example, that Bring to Life. You could do that, bring 3 artifacts to life with that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Someone might have some enchantment removal, but they're not going to have enough to deal with how many enchantments you have in this deck. And they might have artifact removal, but again, they're not going to have enough to deal with the number of artifacts you have. So your stuff that you're putting on the battlefield might seem like, I need some creatures, but get your commander out and start making creatures.
All that glitters. Is that me?
Nope, it's you.
Me.
Yep.
It's me? All that glitters. Should I sing the country music song?
Yep. Want to hear it?
No, you do not.
Don't get us all excited about it and then deny us.
Yes. Enchantment and Sonora Aura, and you can enchant a creature, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So you should put that on your own creature.
Probably.
And that's going to be a little bit silly. Again, they're letting you create treasures. They count towards this.
This one, because it's enchant creature, what happens to it if someone then destroys your creature?
Because it's an enchantment, it goes to your graveyard. Sad.
Artifacts stay on the battlefield. Enchantments will go to your graveyard if they are attached to a creature when the creature dies, because it has to be attached to a creature.
Yeah.
Corridor Monitor, 1 and a blue for an artifact creature construct. And when it enters the battlefield, you can untap target artifact or creature that you control. It is a 1/4, so it's a nice little blocker on the ground. If you have your elders out, it has flying. If not, then it's just a little blocker on the ground.
When should you play that? When should you play that card?
Well, you should probably play it when you have a tapped artifact that you've tapped, like maybe Bag of Holding you've tapped on your first main phase, and you've exiled a card, and you discarded a card and drew a card. You play this one, and then you can untap it and do it all over again. That's a good example.
That's a good example. One that I would do is I would swing with my big creature, and they're thinking, oh good, she's getting her big creature out of the way. I'm not going to block it so that I can swing really, really good next time. And then I play this in my second main phase and untap that big creature.
If you have an artifact creature, yeah.
Makes them very sad.
Yeah, definitely. But that would not work for your...
Artifact or creature.
Oh, is it artifact or creature? Oh, yeah. There you
go.
Shambling Suit. It's a nice little suit of armor that's been enchanted. I've fought many of these in D&D. 3 mana cost, any color. You get its power is equal to the number of artifacts and or enchantments you control. Artifacts and or enchantments you control. So it's a 0-3. I don't know why they didn't put X3 because it's a little confusing.
Normally they do.
Normally they do, but you know, nothing like consistency.
Yeah.
Yes. That's great.
I guess, would it be because it's a 0? Well, X could be 0
X
too.
could be 0. They should have
I'm just thinking if they didn't,
it's
if you didn't have anything on, would you still be able to play this card? If X was 0.
Yeah,
You'd still be able to play
just
this
be
card.
a 0-3. Yeah.
I don't know. Makes no sense. It's because it's going up every time. I don't know. Who knows? If anyone knows, let us know. Okay, now we're into our mana fixing, and handily, most of this is artifacts, which we can use towards all this other stuff.
Fix your mana and have artifacts.
It's just crazy. So, Guild Globe, it's a little 2-cost artifact. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, which is awesome, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice it and add 2 mana of different colors. So it just depends on your situation.
I love that that's different colors.
Yeah.
Mana Geode for 3. When it enters the battlefield, you get to scry, get a little bit of information, and it taps for 1 mana of any color.
Yeah, and you don't have to sacrifice it.
Great card.
Huh. Golden Egg, another card that I really didn't think about, but now I really love.
Yeah.
It is for 2. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. You can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice it and add 1 mana of any color. Or later on in the game, you need some more life. You can pay 2 and tap it and sacrifice and get 3 life. Handy dandy.
Arcane Signet for 2. You can put it on the battlefield, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. This is one of the ones I would take out if you're just playing it as a 60 card deck, which you certainly can do. But you don't need a commander in that case, but great for Brawl.
And then there is the Heraldic Banner for 3. It's an artifact that as it enters the battlefield, choose a color. And creatures you control of the chosen color, probably blue, get +1/+0. So all your little blue fairies get a little boost, and you can tap this and add 1 mana of that chosen color.
That's a good point, because we did talk about the color breakdown, and it was 8, 8, 8, and 8. But with the 2 black, however, your creatures that you're creating are almost all going to be blue. So blue is a good choice. You're so smart.
That's why they paid me the big bucks.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. We don't get paid for this.
Right. We don't have Patreon. We just do it because we love it, okay?
It's fun.
Thank you for listening to us. All right. We're on to our land. We'll go through this quickly because you know what land is, but having good land in your deck is always a good thing. You can switch some of these out if you feel you want a better land base, but Watery Grave is a shock land. All of the Brawl decks that were put out have 1 shock land in them, so they have some good value there. This one taps for a blue or a black, and you can pay 2 to have it come in untapped, which is why they call it shock.
Yeah. I read today that someone is upset because someone bought a whole bunch of Brawl decks specifically for the value of the shock lands.
Hey, whatever you do with them, I don't care. Well, I think the reason is because
they sucked up so many of them.
There was not very many printed to begin with, and a lot of people wanted them, and so
one person takes 10. That's kind of selfish.
It seems selfish, but you know what? It's their money, and if they want to spend it on that and break it all up just to get the shock lands, then they will. There'll be a secondary market.
Yeah. Not sure I would do that, but Temple of Silence. It is one of those lands that comes in, these nice temples that are in every commander, every Brawl deck, I think, aren't they? Are there temples in each one?
Yep, there's temples.
Anyway, and they come in tap, but they let you scry, which is really nice to have at the beginning of the game.
Also in every one is 3 guild gates. This one happens to have Azorius Guild Gate, Dimir Guild Gate, and Orzhov Guild Gate. Each of them comes in tapped, but they tap for different colors. So we have white, blue, blue, black, and white, black.
Then you've got another value card, your command tower, which you can use in so many decks, and you can just tap it and add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. I can talk.
And then we also have 3 of the gain life lands. I don't know if they have special name to this.
I don't know.
I call them gain life lands because you gain a life when they come in. So they come in tapped, but you gain a life. There's Dismal Blackwater, Scoured Barrens, and Tranquil Cove. And they each tap for one of the other colors. So we have blue-black, white-black, and white-blue.
Then we have Emergent Zone, which I think is special to this deck. It is from Ravnica, though, I think. Maybe? Can't remember. You can tap it and add colorless mana, or you can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice it, and you may cast spells this turn as though they had flash. So that's kind of handy to do on the other person's turn. Do that kind of craziness.
And then we have Shawna's favorite card, Evolving Wild. I love this card when we talk about it because it allows us to do our regular public service announcement, which is when you are in a game of Commander or Brawl or anything for that matter, it is always super nice if you tap and sacrifice your land when it is at the end of your turn so that you can search for your land and do your stuff while other people are continuing to play. That way you don't spend a bunch of time people staring at you as you search through your Commander deck. Or Brawl is going to be a little bit easier to find your stuff, but yeah, that's our public service announcement. This one, just sacrifice it and search for whichever land you need.
So speaking of those basic lands, that has 6 plains, 5 islands, and 4 swamps.
So now we get to our favorite section, the one you've all patiently been waiting for.
Yeah.
How would we tweak this deck? I'm sure there's other stuff out there, and I'm sure there's stuff that we've thought of while we're talking about this Unbreakable formation as example. But the first one is Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, for 4 and a blue and a black. Legendary Planeswalker Tezzeret comes in with 5 loyalty counters. Creatures and Planeswalker spells that you cast have affinity for artifacts, which means you can use your artifacts to cast them. So you have treasure tokens that you don't actually want to sacrifice for mana. That's okay. You can just tap them for mana now.
Yeah.
Also, all those other artifacts that are just sitting there waiting for you to do something with them, now you can use them to cast your creatures and stuff. You can +2 Tezzeret, and he deals X damage to each opponent where X is the number of artifacts you control, and you gain X life. You can -3 him to return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand, and you can -8 him to exile the top 10 cards of your library, put all artifact cards from among them onto the battlefield.
Think about that.
Like, that's a good card.
His +2, like, deals X damage to each opponent where X is the number of artifacts you control, and you gain that much life.
Just using his +2 over and over again.
Yeah. End of the game. You don't even have to swing. The other card that I kind of like, it's expensive, but Ethereal Absolution for 4, a white and a blue. Creatures you control get +1/+1, and creatures your opponents control get -1/-1. I don't like it when I play against this card, but I certainly like it in my deck. So yeah, it can get rid of a whole bunch of creatures all of a sudden, plus make yours bigger, and you can pay 2, a white and a black, to exile a target creature from an opponent's graveyard. If it was a creature card, you create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. So it helps with your whole flying thing. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun with that one. Oh yeah.
Divine Visitation. So remember those fairies that you're making? Wouldn't it be great if they were angels instead? So 3 and a white and a white. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, that many 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance are created instead. So that would be nice.
It would be very nice. A little pain in the butt here for your opponent is the Ill-Gotten Inheritance card. At the
Underrated.
Underrated. It's for 3 and a black. It is an enchantment that at the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. You can pay 6 at the end of the game and sacrifice it, and it deals 4 damage to target opponent and you gain 4 life. So I've had people kill me at the end with that. Makes me sad.
There's nothing like killing someone for just like 5 extra.
Sacrificing
like
an enchantment.
sacrifice something. Yeah, it's great. hardcover. Of course, we like this one because we're librarians and we like books. But for one, it's an enchantment, so it benefits from the enchantment things. You enchant your creature, it gets +0/+2, which is okay, it's fine. But you can tap it to draw a card and discard a card. So it's constant card draw once you have this on the battlefield, and you have the benefits of your having enchantment there.
Yeah. Kaya's ghost form is nice to have too. It's a cheap little enchantment aura that's going to help you make your fairies for 1 black, and you enchant a creature or planeswalker you control, and when the enchanted permanent dies or gets put into exile, you return that card to the battlefield under your control. So it's just really nice to bring something back right away.
So question about that.
Yeah.
Rules question.
What?
If I enchant my 4/4 angel token that I created with Kaya's ghost form, what happens when it dies? Do I get another 4/4?
No, because tokens don't exist once they leave the battlefield. So it can't come back. Doesn't exist at all.
So it just goes into exile and then ceases to exist and can't come back.
Yeah. And we have Mirror Maid for 1 and 2 blue. It's a new enchantment. And you may have Mirror Maid enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. So we thought that would be really handy to have for some of those really good enchantments that you
like. Like this one, Pacifism. 1 and a white. You might need some extra removal. I love the Mirror Maid because it's dependent on whichever one you might need at the time. Anyway, this one is enchant creature, and enchant creature can't attack or block. So that thing that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, but doesn't get any other benefits other than getting bigger. Johnny's Pride Mate, the army tokens, all of those types of things. Those are good to put pacifisms on because they will just keep getting bigger and bigger and can't
do anything with it.
And you still control that, even if it's on their side of the battlefield, on top of their creature, you still control it. So it counts towards your count of which enchantments you control.
Luminous Bonds is similar to that. It's for 2 and a blue and enchant creature and it can't attack or block. Yeah. So same thing. I think that's it.
That's it. That brings us to the end of our tweaks and suggestions. So Unbreakable Bond was the other one that Formation, yes, Unbreakable Formation.
Forgot about that one.
So that is definitely another one. What does that one do again?
That one makes your creatures indestructible, and if you play it on your turn, I believe they also get pumped up, I think, for the turn.
If you are watching our video, it's on the screen right now, so you can just read the card. But if you're not, and so we apologize for our podcast listeners. You might have to look that one up. But yes, it's an instant, so you can cast it at instant speed. It definitely gives, I think it's all your creatures indestructible.
On it.
Yeah.
Can't remember how the addendum is worded and what it gives you if you play it on your turn. I think it's a buff.
1+1+1, I think. Or 2. The other one that I was just thinking of as we were talking is Tithe Taker. Is that one still standard legal?
Yeah, it is. It's from Ravnica. Yeah.
Because it makes it so that their stuff that they're casting on their turn costs more. So we talked about just those additional cost spells.
It really messes up their game.
It messes up their game for sure. And it
gives you a chance to build your board, right? And that's one of the things about this deck. The more you get the chance to build that, the better.
If you feel more comfortable with having enough creatures, you could add that as a creature. That would be a decent creature. It doesn't have flying, but it is does what
has afterlife too.
That's right. So more creatures entering the battlefield that trigger other things.
Doesn't want your opponent wouldn't want that creature to die for sure. Playing against you.
And you might, because then you create flyers, so you could just swing with wild abandon.
Have fun with that. And in the meantime,
tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. See you later, guys.
Bye.